Welcome. My name is Emily Schlemwitz. I'm on the Exhibitions Committee of the Surface Design Association, a membership nonprofit focused on contemporary fiber and textile art. I'm delighted to welcome you to this week's Textile Talk, Magic Hour, the intersection of contemporary fiber art and film. Textile Talks webinars are brought to you by the International Quilt Museum, Quilt Alliance, Studio Art Quilts Associates, and the Surface Design Association. First, a few housekeeping announcements. This is a webinar. Your screens and mics are not active or showing. We welcome questions which we'll answer at the end of all of the artists' presentations. Please submit them in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. We are honored to bring you free and inspiring Textile Talks programming. We respectfully ask you to be courteous as you engage with speakers, moderators, and other participants. Your chat comments can be seen by everyone. Please use the Q&A for questions, chat box for greeting others, and survey for commentary or ways we can improve. If you prefer not to see notifications from the chat, you can click on the chat button to toggle them on or off. So I am delighted to be joined here today with Nirmal Raja and Holly Wong. Our executive director, Melissa Ralsted, is in the background and will be playing the slideshow presentations of each of the artists and myself. Melissa, if you could open my slideshow, please. Okay, so this presentation is inspired by the exhibition Magic Hour, Intersections of Contemporary Fiber Art and Film, which is currently on view at St. Kate the Arts Hotel in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and is up through September 10th of this year. The exhibition was a collaboration between the hotel and the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Arts, and myself, the senior curator at WMQFA, and St. Kate's then in-house curator, Samantha Tim. St. Kate prioritizes showing work that pushes the boundaries of material, medium, and concept, and the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Arts is at the forefront of exhibiting innovative contemporary fiber work in the Midwest. We both embrace an expansive approach to curating fiber. And I just wanted to say publicly thank St. Kate for hosting this exhibition and Samantha for being such a gracious and inspiring collaborator as we worked with the artists on this show. As you can see, this is the exhibition installed in one of 5 galleries at St. Kate, and it's a beautiful exhibition. The exhibition has 3 artists in it: Jennifer West, Holly Wong, and Sabrina Gushwanter. This exhibit is part of a continuing dialogue within WMQFA's curatorial program to curate exhibitions that exemplify both the traditional and evolving medium of fiber, and they engage very specifically in exploring interdisciplinary connections. For example, this past year, we curated an exhibition called Counting Threads, which was about the intersection of contemporary fiber art and math. And that was housed at our museum, which is in a 1850s German farmstead, and the main gallery is in this barn gallery that is incredibly beautiful. So this is that exhibition from last year. We are going to continue this interdisciplinary exploration with an exhibition next year about the intersection of humor and fiber. So stay tuned for more on that. Melissa, you can advance. But the inspiration for looking at fiber through the lens of film began for me when this work by Sister Remy Revoir came into the museum's collection. This happened about last year, and as you can see, it's a screen print of film strips. Sister Remy was an art teacher for many, many years at a local university in Milwaukee, and we are very blessed to have, very grateful to have 3 to 5 works of hers in our collection. So I started getting interested in this idea of film and fiber and what that might look like through contemporary artists. And invited for this presentation, Holly Wong, Nirmal Raja, and Jennifer West to participate. All three of them recast film as fabric that can be stitched, layered, or manipulated. Jennifer and Holly are currently up in Magic Hour, and knowing Nirmal, an incredible Wisconsin artist whose work is in both the St. Kate and has been shown many times at WMQFA, including one of her video pieces, she seemed like a perfect person to talk to us today. Unfortunately, though, Jennifer was unable to attend, but she did provide us with a recording with commentary about her art, which I am going to share with you momentarily. I would like to talk a little bit about her background. Jennifer West is an artist who has explored materialism in film for 15 years. She was born in Topanga, California, and lives and works in Los Angeles. She's received significant commissions, including at the Seattle Art Museum, the Institute of Contemporary Arts, Art Night London, Highline Art in New York, Aspen Art Museum, the Turbine Hall at Tate Modern, and her work is in numerous museum and public collections, such as the Hughes Museum in Shanghai, China, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Cleveland, and the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles. So without further ado, I'm going to play an audio recording of Jennifer talking about her work. One second.
Hello, my name is Jennifer West, and I'm an artist, and I'm included in the exhibition Magic Hour: Intersections Between Film and Fiber Art. My work is involved in combining film strips with conceptual and material practice and process and performance in order to create both moving image films as well as different kinds of installations and wall pieces, like the one that you see behind me, which is included in the exhibition Magic Hour. I made my first film, Quilt, in 2009, and it was comprised with all of the cutouts from the first 4 years of my making films. And it had individual frames and test film strips and so forth. And the idea was really around creating this kind of catalog of cast off cutouts and mistakes and errors from my films, and creating this visual kind of trace of these sets of films that I had made over those years. To this day, I've made 85 films using these various processes. The films range from 17 seconds to 67 minutes and have covered a number of different topics. Most of my practice is thinking about the kinds of conceptual materials that I use on a film and how that corrodes the film or changes the film. And I usually refer to those materials in the very long titles of my work. In the exhibition Magic Hour, I have a number of pieces that have a relationship to tapestries and wall hangings, and were made using a sewing machine by sewing the individual strips together in various kinds of ways. And later started really working with very specific sorts of patterns. And back in 2014, I made these very specific patterned films. And each one of them was from a specific project using the cutouts of that film that had been finished, or that installation that had been finished. I also make large walls of film up to 25 feet wide, where I'll show the images that correspond to the film you're seeing on screens in front of the wall of film. And my ideas really stem from wanting to give the viewer of a film or understand the kind of physical possibility and the physical presence that is embedded in time when I'm dealing with film, with this very heavy 70 millimeter film. In my studio all the time, I'm very familiar and aware of the physical nature of film and the size of an individual frame. And I think as film's becoming more and more obsolete, the idea of reanimating it, reclaiming it for these other uses in art is what I'm thinking a lot about now. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Melissa. So now I'd like to turn to Nirmal and Holly. I'm so glad to have them here. I've been admiring their work for a very long time. They've both participated in exhibitions at the museum, and it's wonderful to have them in conversation. A bit about both of them. Nirmal Raja is an interdisciplinary artist living and working in Milwaukee. She had lived in India, South Korea, and Hong Kong before immigrating to the United States 30 years ago. She holds a BA in English Literature from St. Francis College in Hyderabad, India, a BFA from the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, and an MFA from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She has participated in solo and group shows in the Midwest, nationally and internationally. She is the recipient of several awards, including Graduate of the Decade from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, as well as the Mary L. Knoll Fellowship for Individual Artists for the year 2020, and the Mildred L. Harpole Artist of the Year 2022 Award from the Milwaukee Arts Board. Holly Wong is a native of Miami, Florida, and lives and works in San Francisco, California. She was educated at the San Francisco Art Institute, where she graduated with a Master's of Fine Arts with a concentration in new genres. Holly creates installations, assemblages, and works on paper, integrating non-traditional approaches with more traditional sewing techniques associated with the history of women. She has been awarded visual arts grants from the Integrity Arts and Culture Association, Barbara Deming Memorial Fund, the George Sugarman Foundation, the Puffin Foundation, and a Gerbode Foundation Purchase Award. She has had over 70 group exhibitions and 10 solo exhibitions, and is represented by Slate Contemporary Gallery in Oakland, California, and is a member of AIR Gallery in Brooklyn, New York. So welcome to the two of you. Thank you so much for being here. I am going to start off with Nirmal and just asking her, can you please introduce your work to the viewers at home?
Thank you, Emily, for the nice introduction. I am an interdisciplinary artist. My ideas are what drives my material and process choices. A long time ago, it was a deliberate decision to keep the practice open to possibilities and let the material complement whatever it is that I'm exploring. If you could show the next slide. So it was difficult for me to kind of communicate this to my viewers who are coming to see the work for the first time. So my website is really the way I structure how to present the work. I've kind of organized it thematically. These are some of the themes that I explore and loosely laid out chronologically, but I often go back and revisit these themes. Mostly they're about memory, migration, belonging, and loss, most recently due to the loss of family members. So I kind of use the practice as a way to respond to life's changes in whatever language seems most perfect for what I'm exploring.
It's a beautiful work.
Thank you. The next slide, please. I firmly believe that the whole world is interconnected and interdependent. And I think of it as a global fabric. And so in this work, I've used many maps that are hand cut and kind of made into a fabric in itself. It's suspended loosely. It's about a 6-foot diameter that's hung a little bit above your eye level. And it slowly twirls. It's something that you need to experience and be with. And it's fragile because it's paper, but it's also, it creates the globe, kind of it's like a map undone, and it's a rearranged globe. And it really speaks to the interdependency and the fragility of the world. Fabric enters in different ways. In the previous work, it was a metaphor for the global fabric. In this work, it's kind of a proof or how would I say, it's a proof of it, of the human, because fabric is just something just so connected to the skin and the human body. And in this work, I collected objects that people have brought when they migrated to this country, made molds of them and cast them with plaster and fabric. And this is called contained, a still life. And I'm very fascinated with objects, and that's where my current research is, and that's where I will be exploring in the near future. Fabric also enters my video work. I'll let you watch this for a bit and then speak about it. So this is a video montage. The work itself is about 5 minutes long, and this is a small excerpt from it. The work starts with me sewing an imaginary horizon line from the right side of the screen, and it ends with me pulling out the thread on the left side of the screen. I take a lot of videos on my travels, and mostly of waters, because I feel like it's such an important metaphor for migration and travel. And also there's something so fascinating and about the I don't know, it's fugitive. It can be, it exists in so many different forms. And so I'm very fascinated by capturing the nature of water. And this work is very much about movement and about our brief time on Earth and how we hope to leave the world untouched when we leave it. I think. The red thread appears in my work a lot. There's something about piecing these several vignettes together into a narrative that is very much akin to filmmaking, editing, and collaging different things to, you know, from disparate places together to form a new narrative.
Nirmal, can you talk a bit about how you make that work, like the physical?
Sure. Yeah, it's a video montage, and then it's layered with another channel of green screen. So the video, there are two different videos. One video is of me sewing into a white fabric or a green fabric, and in the editing process and using green screen technology, that background is eliminated, and it is layered onto this video montage of water footage. And so it looks like you are sewing into water. But it's just basically editing techniques. And it's, when seen in a gallery setting, I project this onto fabric. So it really looks surreal. And it asks the viewer to kind of suspend their belief and just go along for the journey.
I also remember seeing this work and the noise of the water really coming through before you even saw the work, like coming upon it through the sound.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll break and talk to Holly. So Holly, would you mind talking a bit more about your work and what you do?
Sure. So I have a practice that combines fiber drawing and recently moving image. This is a photograph of a suspended installation called Mine Mountain. And the sewing, the red color, all these different colors that you see, it's polyester tulle that's been sewn through with hundreds of yards of this light reflective thread. This was sort of how I began a lot of my installation work, because I was thinking about the thread line as the drawing line or as dendrites in the brain. I was thinking a lot about the structure of how our minds work. And this piece, I believe, is actually suspended at the St. Kate Hotel. So you can move on to the next slide. This is a piece that is a part of my shadow body series, and this is also at the St. Kate Hotel. I think it's probably best if you go to the next slide for a detail, because it'll give you a better sense of it. So what it basically is it's hundreds of pieces of tulle. Again, sort of this piece is a relative of the earlier piece that I showed you. And it's basically thread that is run throughout. I sewed hundreds of pieces of this tulle together in these sort of layered, sort of ephemeral sheets, and then started to build almost like form like figures. If you could go to the next slide. This is another one from this series, Shadow Body. And I think a lot of my work is informed by the body and about, in particular, this series is about aging. And I think of fabric as a proxy for times of change in my life as a woman. And again, the thread, these pieces, by the way, are all about maybe 5 or 6 feet high and about 4 feet wide. And they're affixed to the wall with map pins. They stick out maybe 4 or 5 inches. If you go to the next slide, you can see a little bit of a detail. And it's this layering of the thread that is cut and sewn together and cut and sewn together, which is sort of a center of my work, which is about repair. Much of my work is about repairing trauma and getting to a point in my life where I try to approach wisdom. And fabric is very much a part of that. As some of you know, much of my work is inspired by my mother's early death to alcoholism. And I think that as a young woman, I really didn't know how to sort of process that trauma. And so if you go to the next image, I started to do these very large, expansive sorts of installations. This is now up at Ogden Contemporary in Utah. This is about 22 feet across. And I started to think about the female body and about expansiveness, the fact that women are often told to be small, to not take up space, to not emerge. And so actually, the title of this particular exhibition literally is Emergence, because it is about this notion of taking back the night. It's about taking up space. If you go to the next image, I think there might be a detail. It's made of silk and cellophane and light reflective fabrics, dichroic film, vinyl tablecloth. There are these sort of vein-like sections that are sewn throughout this 22-foot piece. It's called Guardian of the Spirits. And all of this work is about the ways in which I become my own guardian. I become my own power figure. I think that much of my work is about reclaiming, and the viewer can walk around and within this work. And it's really intended for people to be encompassed by this work. I should pause there Emily, if you wanted me to answer any questions or.
I have a question. Could you guys both speak to maybe the ritual of making? Is it more intuitive for you, or do you have a plan ahead of time? How do you construct things of this nature?
Nirmal, feel free to go first.
I think for me, it's both. Sometimes I have kind of a loose idea that I want to work on. I start, but I'm always looking for those instances when things change, the material talks back, or I come across a reading that's particularly informative and I change direction. So it's kind of a dance between both intention and serendipity.
And I would say the same is very true of my practice. I think I saw in the chat someone asking what materials do I include. Of course, I am including silk and organza, polyester organza, but I happen upon many different types of materials. And it is that intuitive process of sort of laying my hands over things and finding what speaks to me. I use food wrapper, I use cellophane, I use gold lame. I actually, because I also paint and draw, I photograph my paintings and drawings and then print them on transparencies and then cut it and sew it into my fabric sort of suspended things. I hang most of my work with a monofilament wire. And I often do this using, depending on whether, if it's a very tall ceiling, like in Utah there, the ceiling was over 20 feet high. So I use aircraft cable. We suspend the aircraft cable and then the piece hangs off of the aircraft cable. Because a lot of times you can't actually go into the ceiling in some environments. So I'm pretty flexible with that. I'm kind of Spider Woman.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, installing your work, thank you for the trust that you gave me and Sam, but it was really beautiful to like lay the tool over one's hand and see it, it is very bodily in terms of like installing as well. So and kind of dancing.
I really enjoy how light works in your work.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's just very magical to see those layers of tulle and the threads coming through and with the softness of the layers behind it and the way the light filters through all of those layers. That's so beautiful.
Thank you. Well, I think layering is really important to me because I think our impression of what our lives is changes over time and changes as we age. And so I'm 51 and looking at my life, how I remember things is really different than how I remembered things at 25. So I look at my work a lot as layering of experiences and that sort of backward gaze into my life, which is kind of why you see so much layering and so much transparency. And also the pieces change with the light because our lives change depending on how we look at it, right? History is always reinvented.
Mm-hmm.
And Nirmal, your work is just so sculptural and the integration of materials is just so lovely. And I think you would you mind sharing where you're going to be in 2 weeks?
Oh, sure. I start my Arts and Industry residency at John Michael Kohler Art Center at the Kohler Factory in the Foundry. And I've never worked with metal before, but I'll be working with iron and brass very soon for the next 3 months. And I'm very excited about it.
So my next formal question is, you both make multidisciplinary work that brings together film and fiber art. Can you talk about how you see the relationship between the two mediums? What connections are there for you? What draws you to make work that straddles both?
So for me, I think, and you'll see in the later slides how my work is starting to dovetail more literally with moving image and film, but I think some of that is, if we go to the next image, and I think one more, these, I started to think about like film or the notion of the moving image, and also the notion of light in general. And so these pieces definitely are about light traveling through things and using the quilt, the language of quilt, as part of light traveling through something. My husband, Al Wong, is an experimental, was an experimental filmmaker in the late 1960s and 70s, and he moved on to do film installation. So his work is certainly heavily informs the kinds of work that I make. I'm a lover of film, certainly was influenced by the films of Stan Brakhage and Len Lai. And I think that I bring out, it's kind of that fusion of a painterly aesthetic, because I was originally trained as a painter, but also that the diffusion between physicality and, that amorphous netherworld, which is what these pieces are called, quilt suspensions. And that's what I think of when I look at these pieces. How about you, Nirmal?
For me, it's about anything that demands temporality in the idea. Then I start using video, because I feel like I want to hold on to the viewer to tell the story. And so there has to be kind of a beginning, middle, and an end. It's not something that is, just limited to one glance at a drawing or a painting. And so it's almost like I need to use a temporal medium. And so I seek video as a way to express that and hold on to the viewer a little bit longer and tell a story. So I'm kind of always in that space of learning. If it is, I'm not a trained sculptor, but I make sculpture. I'm not a trained video artist, but I make videos. So I like this space of interdisciplinary work, because it pushes me to learn new skills, to connect with others and collaborate if needed, and make the work the best it could be. So I can talk about the next. Did that address your question, Emily, or did you want to?
No, I think that was really good. The temporal nature of the medium.
Yeah. And also it's a material, right? It's this contrast of materiality with just light. Light is a material that is just not so tangible. And not something that you can grasp or hold on to in a solid way. And that's actually a really good segue into this work, because this is very much about the futility of holding on to the present or to anything material. This work was inspired by my mom mentioning a quotation from the Gita in a very offhand conversational manner. It literally translates to harnessing the mind is like wrapping air in cloth, seemingly impossible. And I was just fascinated by that notion of something that is just, so material, but at the same time to speak about the ephemerality of life. And so I started making this form in many different media, including the first thing was this fabric that's stiffened around a beach ball, and the beach ball is taken out, and it just looks like this, these packages of air that defies gravity. And I've also made these in ceramic, and I'll be making them in metal when I go to Kohler. So that intangibility, the ineffability is something that I'm always trying to put or to articulate through materials and my work. I think your next question was about like inspiration. So that's why I put this work in, because I feel like the triggers for my work come from various places, and 2020 was particularly very There was just so much going on during the pandemic and post George Floyd's murder that I was very, inspired to make work in response to both. So this work is an installation of hand embroidered masks of collected quotations from healthcare workers. Stop it if you like. You can always see it on my website in its entirety. The soundscape was done by a local cellist and friend who just simply created a most beautiful, haunting mood for that installation. And I'm still adding to them. I'm at 102 or something because we think it's over, but it's really not. As I'm proof recovering. So yeah, so that I'm also continuously responding to what is going on around me.
And I had the privilege of seeing this work in person, and it was very moving. But also just the intentionality of the making of the work and how, in the construction, the tendrils of the mask line that comes down and the shadows that made, and it was just really lovely. So they looked bodily in some ways.
The next slide. This, yeah. You can go to the next one, I think. I think if you click it one more time, it goes to the, yeah. This is a 1 minute long video poem. Before you started, if I could just introduce it. This work was filmed using my ophthalmologist's camera, a microscope, and it's basically a 1 inch by 1 inch square of cheesecloth set to a poem that came out of the pandemic and the existentialist feeling that we were all experiencing during that time. So I read the poem as a voiceover to a performance of this unraveling of fabric.
Can I ask a question of a thread? The light I saw through my mother's sari, shielding my head in her lap, Is it the same light I would see before I close my eyes? The smell of jasmine in her hair, mingled with sweat and spice. Could it be the same smell I breathe before the devouring fire? If life is an act of weaving, can breath be thread going in and out of you and me? What is it about fabric, the second skin that holds, the porous filter of ritual? Can the breach of a tear be the place for wonder, parsing and examining? Or will it be a portal through which we can touch again the spun silk of another's skin? If time is the unraveling of a tenuous spider's web, don't we need spiders to begin again?
Stop it. And so just, it's meant as a loop in a gallery, so it goes on longer between the poems, but it's currently on view in the Museum of Art in Fort Collins as part of the Fiber Arts International exhibition, which is really nice to be included in a fiber arts exhibition as a video artist.
Thank you. Holly, do you want to share some of your inspiration and also how your work has changed over time?
Sure. I guess we can go to the slides. So I think there was something in the comments there about this piece being influenced by a Bojagi technique, and that's absolutely the case. I have been looking at the notion of, so one of my inspirations is rituals about death and mourning. And these pieces are inspired by very much my adopted culture, my husband's culture, which has to do with Chinese burial customs, where you layer the deceased with burial cloths, which are different colors depending on which family member, and they are layered upon the dead before the casket is lowered into the ground. And so I decided that I wanted to create a suspended burial cloth for my mother, who was somebody that I felt had, I think like many women, kind of disappeared in life. And what she suffered through went unnoticed. And I think about a lot of vulnerable populations, what they suffer through is unseen. So much of my work is about the revelation of the unseen. And you can go to the next one. And this is another one in this series. These are made of, so it's cotton, silk, organza, tulle. I must say, I do understand why quilters use cotton, because cotton is way easier to work with. Of course, when you start trying to make silk, silk quilt blocks, and it's all like, I mean, it's kind of a nightmare, but I was really determined I was going to do it that way. And they are suspended over the LED light, which is attached to the wall. And then it's diffused by photo diffusion film, which is often used in photo shoots. So the photo, it kind of diffuses. They are not stable and stiff. They are suspended from the wall and the ceiling. So if you were to walk up to them, they're basically fabric that is attached to the wall with map pins. And the photo diffusion film is attached to the wall, as well as the LED. And then parts of the quilt are suspended from the ceiling. You can go to the next one. This is Body of Light, which was a larger piece. Those other ones I was just talking about were about 6 feet by 4 feet. Body of Light, this piece is about 15 feet across, 11 feet high and about 6 feet deep. And it's the layers again of this sort of diffuse fabric. And part of my inspiration is that I view the separation between the living and the dead as just a permeable layer, which is why I work with so much transparent fluid fabrics, because I don't see the dead as like, well, they're dead and gone. I see them as just, I can't visually see them with my eyes, but I feel that they all walk among us. And certainly in Chinese culture, when somebody dies, it's not like you're just like, well, we get to visit them once every 3 years. No, like people go out to the cemetery regularly, give offerings. There's a home altar. And this is kind of like my transparent, sort of space between the living and the dead. And you can go to the next slide. This gives you a sense of the sewing work. Again, using a lot of different transparent fabrics and then traditional cotton batiks as well. And then the LED, which is about really the rising spirit. So in summary, my work is about the inspiring the spirit, the rising of the spirit, transforming grief, acknowledging grief, because you have to acknowledge grief to move through it. So that's kind of my thought there.
And your work changes all work changes when it's installed in different locations, but do you intend for this to be sort of the structure, or do you want it to change? Do you want it to change,
Yeah, I'm totally cool with work changing depending on where it is. I'm really not uptight about it. I feel like the work should always relate to the environment. In this case, this was Fort Mason, which was these old military sort of like warehouses. And they were like, well, here's this space, and it was like, the ceilings were like 16 feet. You couldn't actually drill in the ceiling, and you couldn't do this and you couldn't do that, whatever. So I basically did the aircraft cable and some C-clamps, and then suspended, because you could clamp onto the rebar. So I basically did that, and the piece sort of just suspended down from that. So every space that I enter is a new way, it's a new challenge, it's a new experience, and that informs the shape of the work. This was designed for this space, but if it was in a different space, I might make it larger, it might be vertical. The work is always trying to speak to the environment.
Thank you. Shall we advance? I think you have some more work about film.
Yeah. So this is a new piece that I've been working on. These are shots from my studio. This is called Mending Body, Mending Mind, and this is a collaborative project. This, I guess you could proceed to the next images, so you can get a sense of what so I work with, as someone had commented, the Bojagi technique. In this case, this is about like ridiculous amounts of fabric. Like this thing is like 25 feet, or I don't even know. It's like taken over my room. But anyways, this is going to be this installation at the Maui Arts and Culture Center opening on September 12th. And it's white fabric with black cutouts, I use black organza. And if you go to the next image, so I'm creating projection screens, and I can't wait to unveil the whole piece once I finally install it. But what it is I've created these transparent projection screens, mostly with white silk and white cotton. The projected images are literally on the cotton, and then the transparencies are these layers of memory and time. The images were shot by my husband. They are me. And there is sound and a poem that was written by Aya Karpinska, who's a New York-based poet, and she created a sound composition. I used the sound of my scissors, and me and her reading a poem together as a part of the way that this piece presents. But this piece is about mourning and about a rape that occurred, and my mother telling me the story of that. And these are her words if she had lived and could tell me that story. She wasn't, she wasn't killed, but these are things I discovered about her after she died. And so this is very much a mining of her memory. It's her story if she could speak. And so she's speaking through me in this piece.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
And that's me next to the big reflective thing.
Nirmal, do you want to share some ideas and or projects you're working on now as well?
Sure. We could go back to
The slides.
this is behind the scenes images. I didn't realize I had included those. Yes, that's me manipulating the cheesecloth and the technician showing me the images. This is the other work that was inspired by that time of 2020, post murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests. I really felt like the fabric of the nation was changing. And for me, I wanted to make a work that expressed my experience as a witness to what was going on and how hard we have to work to change the structure of a nation, and how to break down our inner walls of discrimination, how to examine. And so I mined a poem that I grew up with by a freedom fighter in India, Rabindranath Tagore. It speaks to the aspirations of a nation. I made bricks with fabric and plaster and built this structure with that poem, and words are revealed and covered and uncovered through a video performance. And I think I have a little excerpt of that. The whole performance is 7 minutes, but I'll leave it up to your discretion to show just part of it. This is an edited version already. And this is the poem with all of the words. I turn to poetry pretty often as inspiration.
Looks like we're having a little technical difficulties.
We can also move on if you like. It's always available on my website.
Thank you. I think
Yeah, so the work that I'll be making at the Polar Foundry will be these wrapping air cloth pieces in iron. They'll be kind of tabletop size, but eventually I would love to make them almost as a child size public work. So people can look and explore the insides as well as the outsides. But this is a good start for me. And the next slide is what I'm really quite excited about. This is what I proposed with, but often with artists, as you know, ideas come and you need to expand and mold, adjust and work towards them. This is on the right side, you see a picture of a ceremonial braid, traditionally used during coming of age ceremonies, weddings, and baby showers. The braid is decorated with flowers, fresh flowers and ornaments. And I plan to create a braid like this in iron kind of exaggerated in scale. So what you see on the left is actually 3D scans of fresh flowers from India that I then got printed here. And these are then going to be used to make molds and cast in iron, which I then will weave into these braids. I know it's a kind of a laborious process with lots of steps, but the Polar Foundry uses sand molding and doesn't allow for lost wax method, which allows for multiples to be created with the same mold.
I just wanted to say
that-
thank
Sorry, I just wanted to complete the thought because that work is very much about the weight that women carry. So when I got the Foundry as my residency choice, immediately what came to mind is the weight of iron. And that's how I think through materials is what is the potential and property of that material and kind of harness that.
you.
Thank you, Emily.
So I just wanted to say thank you to Nirmal Raja and Holly Wong. I believe their websites were posted in the discussion, but we'll repost them, and do find their work on Instagram as well. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to SACWA and the Surface Design Association for hosting this talk. Next week's textile talk is Building Community Through Quilts with Maria Schell and is presented by SACWA. So we'll tune in for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a great conversation.
Thank you.